Hello everyone, my name is Julio Villarreal and I am part of the BMC Digital Workplace support team. In this webinar, we will take a look at the approval selection and configuration in Service Request Management to Digital Workplace. The agenda for today will start up with an overview of BMC Digital Workplace and approval notification. Then we will talk about the approval types. We will do a demo of this. We will see how we can select the type of an approval according to our operational needs and the requirements and characteristics of each of the types of approval that we have to select. Then we will discuss the different options, and finally we will see how we can configure personal notification in our profile and global notification using notification templates for digital workplace. So, what is an approval? An approval is an end-to-end process with an approved outcome. When working with Service Request Manager, using service request definition by service request services or digital workplace workflows, there can be times when requests need approvals from someone, according to your need. This needs to happen before the service request can proceed to the next status. These approvals can be required at different stages of the request lifecycle. Before you begin, you must have the Service Request Manager administrator permissions to configure Service Request Management approvals. The lifecycle of an approval is shown in this slide at a high level, where we observe step by step, starting with the configuration of approvals and notifications. Then we will see which services we need to have an approval. Then we will see the notifications to the approvers and finally the actions that the approvers can take. When a service request definition moves from the draft state to request to approval, the Service Catalog Manager must approve it before it can move to the approved state, so that user can access it to request services. If the service request definitions level process is enabled and the service request definition ad hoc process is disabled, you must configure the approval mappings with a specific company, categories, and phase. By default, service request definitions require approval by the Service Catalog Manager, who has the functional role of the service request definition approver assigned to the service request definition. This requirement is defined in the SRD service request definition form for the service request definition ad hoc process. Let's start with the types of approval with an overview. None means no approval is required. The person approval sends an approval request to any user defined in the people form that you specify. Add this user to the approval field on the Service Request tab in the Service Request definition. The manager approval sends an approval request to management, according to the management level you specify. For example, if you specify 1, the system default, an approval request goes only to the requester manager. If you enter 2, the next level of management must approve the service request, and so on. The maximum number of approval levels is 5. This functionality requires the requester manager and all necessary management levels to be defined in the people form. The group approval sends an approval request to all groups members with the request approver functional role. To use this, you must add the group to the supergroup field on the Service Request tab in the Service Request definition. Finally, the custom approval use a custom approval change that you associate with the approval process or processes of your choice. The custom approval change definitions must have selection criteria that match information in the service request. The custom approval type requires additional configuration before you can use it. When you select custom, a use request management assignment option appears. If you select the checkbox, add any ad hoc approval process associated with the service request definition, use the requester manager as the first approver. This functionality requires the requester manager to be defined in the requester people record. Next, I will show you in the tool the elements that we have just reviewed. To access from the ITSM homepage, click on the application bar, look for the Service Request Management module, and select Service Catalog Manager Console. In the list of Service Request Definition or SRD, we select one to which we will configure it an approve type and click on View. You can specify the type of approval in Service Request tab in Service Request Definition form. For this example, we will create an example for a Service Request Definition. Go to Service Request tab and select the approval type Person. For the approval type as Person, you can select an approval from here. For example, we are going to select Set Podder. Now, every time the service request is submitted by any user, the approval will directly go to the set podder. Let's go now to our digital workplace. From our digital workplace homepage, we search for the service we have just configured and make the request. Once the request has been sent, we observe the status of our request and we can see the details of the approvers that are pending in our activity list. As we can see, it's pending approval by setPodder, whom we configured previously. Let's continue with the next type of approval. The next type of approval is approval by manager. Here we can select different levels of manager approval. This sends a request to our manager according to the level we specify. For example, if we specify the level at 1, then that is going to be our default approval request that it will ask the manager for. If we add 2, then the next level of manager must approve the request, and the maximum numbers of approvals or approval levels will be 5. For this type of approval, we must make sure that our users who are going to use this service request have the manager field configured in the CTM people form as we see in this screen. This configuration is in the More Details tab. In this example, we see the configuration for my user Cassie, who has Jennifer Jefferson as her first level manager. We must also make sure that if we need more approval levels in this service request, that each of the managers involved in the levels that we define in our service request have the manager fill it in. For this example, I can review the configuration of my manager Jennifer. Although remember that I have configured only one approval level. Again, once requester uses this service request from our digital workplace, the approval will now be directed to the manager that the requesting user has configured. Here we see the request that will be pending approval from our manager. Okay, the next type of approval is the group approval. Group approval sends an approval request to all members of the group with the request approval functional role. To use this, you must add the group to the supergroup field on the Server Request tab in the Server Request definition. So, before we set up group approval, let's review the group we want to use for approval by group. In the CTM supergroup form, I will select the supergroup that we are going to use. For this example, I will use the Apex Global supergroup with the organization of facilities and with the name of Office supergroup. In the People Display tab, we can see that there are 9 records from CTM People form that appear in this supergroup. However, if we switch to the Roles Display tab, we will notice that only 2 people have the approval role for this supergroup. I will go back to my digital workplace and where I have already made the request. And now we will see that it has a status of pending approval. It indicates that there is a pending approval. However, we see that there are two approvers that we have configured in our supergroup. So any of them have access to the detail of our request. Let's take a look at the types of approvals we have seen so far. None, we do not require any approval. Person, we require approval from someone who has a record on the CTM People form. Manager, we require approval from one or more managers levels of the 5 levels who are registered in the CTM People form. Group, people who belong to a supergroup and who have the role of request approval on the CTM People form. And now I will go into detail about the last configuration, which is the most complex, although it is very useful. How to configure a custom type approval. The process to configure a custom approval requires 2 important steps: creating an approval change and creating an approval mapping. The approval change is a series of approvals in which an approver runs based on the output a previous approval. A change of approvals or chaining refers to a series of approvals in chaining. An approval is run based on the outcome of a previous approval. To create an approval change in BMC Digital Workplace, a service request administrator can create a new approval process or reuse the default sample process. You can link together the following types of processes in an approval change: service request management change, service request ad hoc, service request level. Finally, there is the step of creating approval mappings. You must create approval mappings to use the level approval processes for service request and service request definitions. The default approver for service requests is the requester manager, which is based on the requester manager information defined in the people form. The default approver for SRD is the request catalog manager. Use the approver mapping form to set up individuals and supergroups as approvers for each approval phase of service request and service request definitions, based on the approval process defined in the approval process configuration form. Only default group change, custom change, and service request definitions level rules use the information in the approval mapping form. I am going to start with the selection of the service request definition to which I want to configure a custom type approval. In the list that I already know, I just select the custom option and save. Now I'm going to go to the Application Administration Console and I will look for the approvals configuration for the service request definition module I validate that I have the two options that we have previously discussed. Let's start with the change of approvals. As I said, I can use the change that we have previously configured, or I can create my own change of approvals. For this example, I am going to configure it a simple approval change. As in all remedy configuration, I will place values in the fields that are required. Of these fields, it is important to change the status to enable. For this example, I am going to a process name. In this sample, I will use process type level and click on apply. Automatically, it refreshes the panel of the approval change with the different valid statuses for an approval. Now, I am going to add a set field action and click and apply. And it places the options in the next level of my approval change. For this example, I am going to add the status field with the condition that it has the value of planning and click on save. Now, I am going to complement with the selection criteria information. This is where I am going to relate my service request definition. As you can see in the screen, I have many options to create a criteria. In this example, I'm going to use my service request definition, to which I previously indicate the type of approval as custom, and I select it. And I return to the criteria screen where I simply click on select. And now I have created my approvals change ready for use. Now, to conclude my configuration, I am going to create the mapping. For this example, I am going to use again my approver user set potter. Selecting first in the approval indicator field as the service request, I search for my approver and add the face name, and now save it. Now, as in the previous configuration, from my digital workplace, I can generate a request and it will go to the approver I have configured. This concludes the types of approvals I can configure. And as I have shown, I can make the approvals as simple or as complex as my day-to-day operation requires. BMC Digital Workplace enables users to quickly see the status of important services and notify approvers that there is action for them to take. There are several configurations you can choose when to send notifications. These notifications events can be configured not just for approval in Global to Digital Workplace. There are configurations for each of the three types of notification as I will describe below. With BMC Digital Workplace, user can receive the following types of notifications: email notifications, push notification are sent to mobile device, and in-app notification are bell notification and new feed notifications. In this demo, I will show you how to get the configuration options for notification with BMC Digital Workplace. From our main page in Digital Workplace, we with an administrator user can enter the Digital Workplace Administration console. I switch to the setting option and select Email and Notification. In this part, we can see the email settings and the global settings of the users. The email configuration is provided by BMC for SaaS customers. For the user configuration, as I commented previously, it's for all the notification I want to receive, not just for approvals. Let's see the notifications for approvals, notifications for requests, notification for surveys, notification about service health, and finally, the notification for social activities. Remembering that Digital Workplace is designed to be used also as a social network, but that is the subject of another webinar. By default, end users receive standard email, push, and in-app notifications. As the BMC Helix Digital Workplace Administrator, you can customize email, push, and in-app notifications to suit your or your end user's business needs. You can modify the text in the notifications fields and disable optional elements of the notification template. For example, you can change the default description text of the push notification or hide the product name in the email notification. You can customize notification for a request submitted and a new approval. The following demo demonstrates the end-to-end scenario of how to BMC Helix Digital Workplace Administrator provides the email and phone on the support team in the footer on the email notification for the request submitted. When the request receives an email notification about the request, they can see the support contacts in case for any question arise. In the BMC Helix Digital Workplace Admin Console, navigate to the Configuration tab, click Email and Notification and Templates. Hover over the notification event you need, request submitted or approval, waiting for your approval. Click in Action and select Edit. In the modal window, select the Email Notification tab and customize the fields you need. Important: you can only show or hide the branding elements of the email notifications. These are the elements that you can make visible or hide: logo, product name, header background, and powered by BMC. In the heading sections, we have four options. Heading 1. Select this checkbox if you want to show the heading in the email notification for single request or single request approvals. Modify the text of the heading in the text field. You can use all HTML tags except those in the list. Heading 2. Select this checkbox if you want to show the heading in the email notification for multiple requests and multiple request approvals. Modify the text of the heading. Informative alert. Select this checkbox if you want to show the due date, a single request approval, or multiple request approval. By default, the due date variable is given. The due date must be set in Action Request System. Heading descriptions. Select this checkbox if you want to show the order description of the request approval. By default, the order description variable is given. For the context section, I have five options. Item list. Select this checkbox if you want to show the list of items that the end user requested. Additional content. This checkbox is cleared by default. Select this checkbox if you want to show any additional information. Modify the text of the additional content. Label for the View Details link. This checkbox is mandatory. You can only change the name of the View Details link that leads of the page with the request details in BMC Helix Digital Workplace. Footer content. Select this checkbox if you want to show the footer in the email notifications. Modify the text of the footer. Label for Manage Email Notification link. Select this checkbox if you want to show the Manage Email Notification link. You can change the name of this link. For the push notification section, I have only two options to configure. Use the checkboxes to hide or show content. Customizing the content will override the default when published. For the in-app notification, I have only one option. Using this checkbox to hide or show content. On these options, I can change the content will override the default when published. For each of the settings, I can see an example to confirm the default views of each of the notification. And with this information, I can decide whether to change any of the settings or not. Finally, from your digital workplace access in your profile, you can configure the notifications for your profile. This will only affect your user. However, it is a no error when we no longer receive the notification. Enable the notification setting that allowed end user to turn request notification on and off. Let's finish with the last part where I will show you how the notification looks like from an approval view and the actions that the approver can do. From our initial screen with set Potter's users, let's see the configurations that he has in the notification according to the previous explanation. And with this configuration, Potter has access to the approvals and pending notifications where he can approve, reject, or keep on hold with some comments that he can add from this view. I will make a brief summary of what we have observed in this webinar. First, we saw the types of approvals and notifications. We make the configuration for each one of the approvals. We configured the different notifications options. For each one of the topics, I made a demo directly in the different modules of ITSM and Digital Workplace. And finally, I showed the examples of the notifications and approvals. For more information on approvals, please refer to the documentation in the BMC's website indicated on this slide. Thank you for attending this webinar. I hope you find the information useful. If you need to watch this webinar later, do not hesitate to subscribe to official BMC YouTube channel, which includes Digital Workplace.